Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the You Look Happier podcast. My name is Ellie Forsyth and I am joined today by Mark O'Sullivan. Hi Mark.
Hi Ellie.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. A little bit nervous, but
I say this every time with every guest, but it is so normal.
yeah,
Because look at where we are.
yeah,
It's like we're in a film studio,
Yeah.
essentially, aren't we? But hopefully the more that we chat, the more at ease that
Yeah.
you'll feel. You don't seem nervous, so that's good.
cool.
Maybe it's on the inside.
I'm a driving instructor by trade normally, so I'm used to the terrifying on a daily basis. So I think I'll quickly settle into it.
Yeah, I love that.
So, and it's actually obviously the room. It's a lot bigger than my Ford Puma. So,
Well, in terms of who you are,
yep.
could you explain just to the listeners a little bit about you, why you're here today, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, I'm Mark. I'm 57, father of two. My wife Karen, she has 3 kids, so we got like a blended family, as they
Wow.
call them now. 2 grandkids, Bodie and Jude, who are a handful, but an adorable handful. Currently a driving instructor. Been doing that for 15 years, and prior to that, I was a service engineer in the fire protection industry. Did that for best part of 20 years. Basically, why I'm here, I've been sober for 35 years in October this
Wow.
year, and prior to stopping the drink, I could not hold down a job. My drinking just got in the way. Even when I was 17, 18, you know, where you think most people are out there enjoying life, but drink just, it didn't agree with me. But it took me a while to actually admit and own up to that. So I went through the amount of jobs I lost just through reckless, unreliable, just didn't care, basically, attitude. But when I sort of got sober, the fire protection was the first job where I think I'm quite good at this, and I was reliable. I could turn up every day, have a bit of, when I looked in the mirror, a bit of pride. And I sort of stayed in that. It was about 20 years, and then I just decided I needed a change. Industry wasn't what it was when I started, so just took a leap of faith, became a driving instructor, and still here to this day. Touch wood.
Touch wood.
Yeah.
So 35 years
Yeah.
you have been sober.
Yeah.
Now, we've got a book here as well, which I want to get into and I want to
Sure.
talk about. But 35 years is a hell of a long time. What was it that made you make that decision that you weren't going to drink anymore?
Well, like I just said, I couldn't hold down a job.
Right.
I was, I think the first time it sort of manifested when the lad Adrian
Yeah.
Middleton. We were good friends at school and after school, and he got me, or his dad offered me a job with his firm Damco. So I started working with them. We used to get paid on a Thursday night, so I'd be down the port of call, 16 years of age, thinking, Jack the lad, a few pound in my pocket. Friday morning, I'd be absolutely hanging. And I just couldn't get out of bed, really, hangovers destroyed me,
Right.
And it's a wonder I ever drank after my first ever one, again, because it was. But the lads used to come and pick me up for work in the morning. There'd be no sign of me. They'd be beeping the horn, which, the neighbours used to complain. Can you get out of bed in the morning? Because we
Waking them up.
Waking them up. And then they'd knock the door, and eventually I'd scramble down, And this was continuous. I think I was with Damco, I want to say 18 months, maybe 2 years. And only because of my friendship with Adrian did Bill keep me on so long.
Right.
I just wouldn't turn up. And when I did get to work, sometimes I'd be useless. I'd just hide in a corner, throwing up in a bucket or something. And even when I look back on it now, I think, why didn't you just think, you can't go on like this?
Yeah.
But I think, when you're 18, you don't think, you're reckless. And I went from job to job to job. Bill, eventually, the reason I sort of left Amco was I broke my hand. I was trying to get in the house one night. I was drunk. There was no one in. I forgot my key. So I thought, oh, no, I'll climb in the bay window. So I tried to climb up on the roof, and I slipped and fell, broke my hand.
Oh my
But it was
gosh.
it was like the scaphoid bone in your hand, which is like a tiny little bone. So I didn't realise straight away. And eventually I went to the hospital about 2 weeks later, and they said, put me in plaster. So I was off work for a few months. Bill, was good, paid me my sick pay and everything. But then it kept coming to where I was due to go back to work, and I kept falling over. I'll be drunk, and I'll just fall
Right.
over.
So you were still drinking at the time,
Still
even though you
drinking,
weren't
yeah.
able to work?
Yeah,
Got it.
still drinking. And then I think there was one night, again, I was due to go back. I think I'd been off for 6 months. What should have been 8 weeks was 6 months. And I was due to go back to work Monday. I was out the Sunday night in the Hearthsell in Craven Street with my mates.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them says, oh, we'll go out and have a few pints Monday lunchtime. And so I rang Bill from the Hearthsell, 10 o'clock Sunday night. There's no way you couldn't have heard all the background chatter going on.
Loud in there anyway.
And I just said, I can't come in tomorrow. My hand's sore again. And I think it was a couple of days after I just got the call, can you come into the office on Thursday? I think I went in Thursday to collect my wages, and that was my final wages. He says, I'm sorry, I've got to let you go. Why he didn't do that sooner, God only knows, because I was a severe disappointment to him.
And how old were you then, Mark?
I was probably 18, 19.
Okay.
And then I would just go from job to job, then building site labourers, jobs. My dad would often get me jobs, people he knew in the Hearthsell who were like contractors and that. And again, I just wouldn't turn up. And if I turned up, I was good for nothing. And eventually my uncle, my dad's brother Sean, took me on to train me as a plasterer.
Right.
And started off all right, but because of the issues I had with my hand, I couldn't really hold a trowel all day long. So I was just basically, I said, I'm not going to be able to do this. So I was just his labourer. Uncle Sean took ill. So I think by now I was probably in my early 20s. And Uncle Sean took ill. He had cancer. They found it quite late. It was bowel cancer. And if they'd have found it sooner, he would have been able to treat it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
But they had to have an operation where they removed part of his bowel. And there was something, I can't remember the exact ins and outs, but he had these tubes in him,
Right.
and something leaked inside, which almost killed him, basically. He was on a life support machine, and me and my dad went up to visit him in hospital. And a lot of people used to say I resembled my Uncle Sean more than my dad. My dad and Sean were very alike, but Sean was tall and thin. My dad was more stocky,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like 8 stone, dripping wet back then. And they used to say I resembled Sean more. And we stood in the hospital, and I just looked at him in the hospital bed, and it terrified me. Even though it was a different thing, obviously my issues were just sort of drink related. But just seeing Sean, it was like seeing a picture of myself, down the road. I went out that night. I think I got my gyro the day before because I was still signing on. Back then, we got a gyro on
Right.
every fortnight.
So is that like universal credit now, is it?
Yeah. So your dole money. So that came through, I think, that day or the day before. I went out that night, got absolutely shit-faced.
Mm-hmm.
I was hammered. Woke up the next day. I think my dole money then, my gyro, would have been about 56 quid or something. And I woke up the next day.
What's that, a week?
It was a fortnight.
Okay.
So a fortnight. So every 2 weeks I used to go on the lash.
Right.
Big time. In between, my dad used to give me a few pounds to go out, we did laugh when I stopped drinking, because sometimes my dad was brilliant with me. He never lectured me or anything about, stopping drink. He used to say, you're not cut out for it. You can't get up to work, you can't perform. He says, you need to think about another way. But, you know, you don't listen when you're young, do you? And some nights I'll be sat in the house and Dad says, "You're going out?" And I'll say, "No." He goes, "You got any money?" And I'll just say, "No, no, but I'm all right, I'm staying in." And Dad would throw me a fiver.
Right.
Back then, a pint was like 70, 80 pence, you know, for a pint. And he'd throw me a fiver. And I'd sit there, you know, thinking, "No, I'm not going to go, I'm not going to go." But then it would be eating away at me, and I'd just grab the fiver and I'd go straight down the rehearsal, you know, and just blast a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to do that on a regular basis. And there was one day he said, "You need to say to me about, you know, maybe you shouldn't drink." I said, "Well, stop giving me money then."
Yeah, literally.
just like laughing with him. And I said, "Well, if you stop giving me money, I wouldn't be able to go out." But Dad was generous to a fault. And when I look back at it, sometimes I used to think when I was drinking, I was in my early 20s, you know, late teens. I wasn't hurting anyone. I wasn't married, no kids. So, you know, I've seen people in later life with married with kids and that drink really affects them, the whole family. But when I look at it, I thought, well, it did affect that. It affected my dad, you know. Probably the embarrassment as well. He'd go in and he'd hear contractors saying, "Oh, we need a few lads for work," and my dad would say, "Oh, Mark's not working." Yeah, we know. We sacked him last week or
Right.
something. And so the embarrassment there, you know, couldn't have been easy for him. But going back, you know, when I seen Uncle Sean in the bed, you know, went out that night, absolutely hammered. Woke up the next day. I think I had about £20 coins or something in my pocket. You know, no notes left. And I'm thinking, where's all my money gone? And I was just wrecked. And I just thought, I can't do this anymore. And you know, I was working for Sean, and he was in hospital, so I could, you know, that was my only avenue for a job. Was who wouldn't sack me was my uncle, and just said that day, "That's it. I've had enough." I did, you know. I think it was a bold statement. You know, you say never again,
Mm-hmm.
but I think after a few days, you think, you know, well, you can never say never. And it was just then I started just, you know, taking it one day at a time. You know, I know it's probably a cliche for
Yeah.
addicts. They all say one day at a time, but
But it is for a reason, isn't it?
It works for a reason. And but I never left the house for a couple of. Again, it's, you know, it's 30 odd years ago, so I can't remember the exact time frame. But on at least 2 weeks, possibly a month, I never left the house. I'd go down the shop and get a newspaper. I was smoking at the time, so I get cigarettes. And that's one thing. When I stopped drinking, I couldn't realise how my smoking reduced as well. Because I used to, a lot of people, they smoke more when they're drinking.
Mm-hmm.
10 fags could last me a week when I stopped drinking.
Wow.
And
So you weren't actually that big a smoker
no,
then?
no, it was just when I was drinking, used to
Mm-hmm.
smoke more, you know. And it was so I stopped, never left the house. Even Dave's dad would go down and say, "Do you want some fags? Do you want a paper?" He knew what I was. But again, he never lectured me. He knew what I was going through, and Dad was a quiet man. Apparently, my aunties will always say the O'Sullivan men because you can't get a word out of them. You know, we bottle things up. You know,
Right.
apparently, and but I could see he was delighted. You know, he thinks, okay, you know, and I think it was, again, the date's a bit sketchy, but I think it was the 12th or 13th of October, the last time I had a drink. And because I remember going out, I can't remember what, because my mate, it was his birthday, I think on the 12th, and he rang me up the next day raring because I didn't go out with on his birthday. I just went out after seeing Sean. I just went, can't remember where, but I just went out, just I wanted to get bladdered.
Mm-hmm.
And he rang me up and he said, "Well, we go out tonight then." And I said, "No, I can't, you know, I'm knocking it on the head for a bit." And a few weeks after that, my dad said he'd pay for me to have driving lessons. Because I had a few lessons when I was 17. Dad bought me 5 lessons in a bulk for my 17th birthday. And then when I had to start paying for them myself, I think it was like $7.50 a lesson back then or something.
Flipping heck.
Oh no, I'm charging 40 an hour now. So it's like,
I think it was it 20 an hour when I was learning? £40 an hour, is that what it is now?
well, yeah.
Bloody hell.
And so I had a few when I was 17, but then when I started after paying for them myself, I thought, well, that's beer money, you know, and so I just didn't bother taking any. I had a couple more when I was 21, Turned up for a lesson once after I'd had a few drinks, and the guy should never have let me in the car. And I'm embarrassed saying this now because I'm a driving instructor, but I got in. I'd had about 4 or 5 pints, and I drove. And
Bloody hell.
and then again, I woke up the next day, and I just thought, well, what the hell did I do? I never had another driving lesson. I thought, no, I can't do that again. And then when I was 23, stopped drinking. My dad said he'd pay for me to get my license, and that was one of the things that sort of really helped me stay off the drink. The embarrassment of having a lesson when I was drunk a few years ago. But I thought, if I get my license, the last thing I want to do is get drunk and lose it, because I would never trust myself to not drink and drive. So we paid for a course of lessons, and I think it was the 9th of January. The next year I passed my test, and back then it was a lot easier to get a driving test. God, now, and even then we thought it was bad. I had to wait 6 weeks. We're waiting 6 months now to get a test. But once I passed my test, it just again gave me that bit of confidence, bit of self-belief. And then Sean was still recovering, so again I still wasn't working. My auntie in Ireland, Auntie Jean, she rang and she said, they're building an extension on the house in Ireland. Why don't you come over and help out? You're not doing anything back home. So again, I joke about it. Now am I the only man in history that went to Ireland to sober up?
Literally. I've never heard of that before.
and it worked. It was and the best thing was when I got to Cumber in County Down. It's probably about 8 miles outside Belfast. My cousin Tony came and picked me up on a Tuesday night. He says, right, we're going out for a few drinks. Him and his mates used to meet up on a Tuesday, a few drinks, game of pool. We walked into this pub, and he said, what are you having? And I said, I'll have a 7-Up. And one of his mates said, oh, you're not drinking? And I just said, I don't drink. And I think it was the first time I said that, and it actually meant something. Because back in Coventry, once I started going out again, going football training, it was, what you having? I said, I'll have a pint of orange juice or a pint of Coke. And it was like, go and have a pint, you boring so-and-so. And I go, hang on a minute, 6 weeks ago you were telling me knock it on the head, because I'm not going to sugarcoat. When I was drinking, I could be an embarrassment. I could start kicking off, starting arguments with total strangers for no reason. Just an absolute arsehole. And then they were saying, have a pint. And I said, well, hang on a minute, you were telling me a few months ago, to knock it on the head. And he goes, yeah, but you're boring when you're not drinking. And I thought, well, I'd rather be boring than, the way I was. And it just got, when I moved to Ireland, that just gave me a bit of peace. I wasn't having to deal with that. Why aren't you drinking? Why aren't you drinking? When I said it that night in, I think it was a Castle Inn in Cumber High Street, I don't drink. That was it. It was never questioned again. What you having? Or they'd even just say, oh, 7-Up, Mark, and that was it. And it was a nice feeling, waking up the next day, remembering where I'd been and what I did, not thinking, oh Christ, who did I embarrass last night or whatever. And I was working, like I say, on the house, helping just labouring again with all the people, the contractors that were coming in doing Auntie Jean's extension. And when that finished, I started working for myself, bit of landscaping, bit of gardening.
Still in Ireland?
Yeah, still in
So
Ireland.
how long had you been there for at this time?
Probably, I got there, I always remember I got there on Valentine's Day, 1991.
So you quit in the October.
Quit in the October.
You passed your test in the Jan.
Jan.
Then you went to Ireland.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And then when the extension was finished, my uncle Raymond, he used to keep greyhounds. I think he had about 8 to 10 greyhounds at the time, and he had a little run out the front where the kennels. It was a real professional operation. Had all these big kennels for the dogs, and there was he was extending the run for where the dogs were, so that there was like bit of a garden out the front, and he dug all the garden up and then laid sort of gravel down for the dogs. And we had this massive pile of turf mud, from where he'd dug the garden up. And he said, "Why don't you sell it? Topsoil." So I used to stand out the front and sieve this soil. They used to laugh at me, I'd be out there for hours and hours with this little sieve trying to sieve it all, get all the fine topsoil. We'd bag it up, advertise it in the shops. This was like pre-internet. If you ever dare to think of such a thing, we used to have to go and leave cards in the newsagents. Topsoil for sale,
And how much were you selling it for?
I can't remember, to be honest. I can't remember, was it £5 or £6 a bag or something? It might have been more. I honestly can't remember. But we used to sort of bag it up in. Some people might order just a couple of bags, but they'd actually ask me to go down and do the garden while I was doing it. I just sort of fell into it, with doing a bit of landscaping and that. Some nights you get people who are asking for 20, 30 bags, and my uncle.
It's a lot of sieving.
Yeah. Oh Christ! It was hours and hours. But to be honest, it was quite therapeutic, because it was, not the most exciting job in the world, but it gave you time to think, about what you've done and where you want to go, going forward. And it was a summer, summer in Ireland, so it was great. I bought a car, which was 3 or 4 months prior to that. Thought of me owning a car was just non-existent,
But even you being able to legally drive a car, your dad actually having the confidence and the trust in you, that, to even have the lessons, none of that would have happened.
No.
Would it?
If I hadn't have stopped drinking, definitely not. I wouldn't have even.
Was it? There's a few things here. Was it difficult for you? When you went to the pub in Ireland the first time, and they said, "Oh, what you having?" I hear it quite a lot, that sheer panic. Even if I've stopped drinking for a bit, I'm not a massive drinker. Obviously, I can't drink at the minute, but I'm not a massive drinker anyway. But I used to be.
Yeah.
But that sheer panic of, oh, what do I say? What do I say? That kind of anxiety. Did you have that when you were trying to decide what you were going to have?
Not in Ireland, oddly enough.
So strange, isn't it?
Because it was my fresh start.
Right.
When I started going out in Coventry, I had that panic. What you're going to have, and I think when I first stopped, I was drinking pints of Coke.
Okay.
And because you're in the habit of, when we used to go out drinking, you're necking pint after pint after pint when you're drinking. I was exactly the same on the Coke. And it was waking up the next day, you think, oh, I'm going to have a clear head. The head was clear, but the body wasn't. The acid and
It's
your
like the
stomach,
sugar,
the sugar and that. It was. I used to, even though I had a clear head, I still felt ill, because you're firing pints of Coke into you. Then I started drinking just orange squash, because I thought less sugar. There's probably more sugar in it, but you haven't got the fizziness.
Yeah.
So that got a little bit easier, but it was trying to get into the habit of not necking it pint after pint after pint. So now I can go out, I tend to just drink water. If I go into a pub now, I'll just drink water. But 1 pint of water could last me all night. If we're out for 2 or 3 hours, sometimes just one will last me. And even after that, people will go up, if I finish the drink, do you want another one? Nah, I'm all right. So I got out of that habit of just constantly just having to have a glass to my mouth. But when in Ireland, it was just like I say, a fresh start. Just saying that I'll have a 7-Up. There was no conflict. Walking in the street, in Coventry, I used to have to say, right, in my head, kept saying, pint of Coke, pint of Coke, pint of Coke.
Yeah.
Don't order, don't let it slip out, pint of lager,
Yeah.
So I was always saying, pint of Coke, and it was, but once I got there, it was, I don't know, it was weird. I'm not going to say it was easy, but it was a lot easier than it could have been. And because All my family in Ireland. We used to go there as kids. We'd spend the whole summer in Cumber, in County Down. Um, Probably go as soon as school finished. Some weeks or some years we'd get up away before school finished. So we used to get an extra week or two off. But in a way, it was sad why we had to do it because my mum died when we were 7,
Right, okay.
and my dad couldn't take all the holidays to look after us when we were young kids. So every school holiday we'd go Easter, Christmas, and the half terms we'd go to London, stay with dad's sisters, and summer we'd go to Ireland for the whole summer, stay with my mum's sister, Auntie Jean.
And would your dad come over with you, or would he?
It varied from year to year, depending on what he was a lorry driver, drove a car transporter, so it depended on when his school holidays, work holidays were. Sometimes we drive over. We'd go to Auntie Jean's, stay a week there. Then we go down to, my dad was from County Waterford. Then we go down there to see his mum and sister. We'd stay there a week. Then Dad would drive back up to Belfast, leave us there, and then come home. Other years we'd fly over on our own, and then Dad would come over and join us. And then we'd always do from Belfast to Waterford, and then back up again. So it was, but we'd spend pretty much the whole summer in Cumber. My wife Karen, when she first met my Auntie May, who's my Uncle Sean's wife, she used to say, she said to me one night, I think it was the first or second time she met her, she goes, "Don't you find it really weird that Auntie May's always talking about your mum?" I guess now, it keeps her alive, and I love it. And then she found it quite hard that because obviously we lost her mum at 7, my sister Linda was 8, my younger brother Francis was 4, no, he was 3. But we had a wonderful childhood.
Wow.
Because of these people in Ireland, like my Auntie Jean. Sorry, I'm welling up a bit.
It's okay, take your time.
But Auntie Jean, she married into a big family. Like my cousin, I keep calling him my cousin Tony. We're not blood relatives, but he's like my auntie's my uncle Raymond, who married my Auntie Jean. But they're as close as cousins as our actual cousins, and her sisters, brothers, or in-laws, should I say, they're as close as anyone could be. So when I went to Cumber, it was
like a home away from home. It sounds.
It was, and they remembered me as a kid, and not the pisshead down the Hersal or the port of call, or so when I wasn't drinking, it was easy because it was just not expected. Whereas back in Coventry, have a drink, and it was, you just, even when you didn't want it, sometimes you'd think, I'll have one just to shut them up. So you're constantly fighting in your head,
But also, you couldn't win either because they're the people around you in Coventry were the people telling you to knock it on the head. But then when you're not, when you actually have, oh, you're boring.
Yeah.
So how long did you stay in Ireland for before you came back to Coventry? All in all?
Not long enough. I think it was about 18 months, 2 years. I can't. Between 18 months and 2 years, I think. Because I'll say I was doing the gardening.
Right.
And it was getting sort of August time, and I'm thinking, and this was the weird thing. I was actually planning ahead. I'd never planned ahead in my life other than when's the next gyro coming so I can go out on the lash, And I was thinking in August, winter's coming. I'm not going to get in a lot of work gardening, in the winter. And I'd done a job for this old lady in Cumber, some topsoil and that, and probably finished about lunchtime. So, and again, I got paid, and it was enough to sort of keep me going. And I just drove off to the seaside for the afternoon. I used to do that a lot when I was in Ireland, just drive down to the coast. We were so close to the sea, or Strangford Lough. which is one of my favourite places when we were kids. So I took myself to Bangor in County Down, had a bag of chips, you know, nothing better than a bag of chips sitting on the beach. And I was walking down the street and it started to rain. And I jumped. It was ironic, there was a pub across the road or the job centre, and I needed to get out of the rain. And again, that was an eye opener. I chose the job centre over the pub.
Wow.
So I went in and I was just sort of mooching around, you know, waiting for the rain to stop. And I seen a job advertised on the board, trainee fire extinguisher service engineer. The only qualification was driving licence.
Which you
And I
had.
thought, I've got one of them now. But then I just thought, no, that's not for me. You know, I had no confidence, you know, very little self-esteem. So I just walked out, left it. And I got to my car. And again, I started thinking, I've got a job to do tomorrow, but what have I got for the rest of the week and the rest of the year? So I just walked back up, went to the job centre again, took the card off the shelf because I thought no one else is having this, and went up and applied for it. And then I had to go through this process of, it was a job training scheme. Back then, the government used to do job training schemes where you wouldn't get paid for the job, but you'd get your benefits plus an extra 10 or 20 quid a week or whatever.
Is that like an apprenticeship sort of thing? Or
apprenticeships, you actually got a wage.
Right.
You know, you got a wage. This was, you'd still get your
gyro.
Your gyro.
Right.
Plus, they got you like a training bursary or something, which I don't know if it's like 20 quid a week or something. So I applied for it, and then they said I had to go to this like training centre. You do like a week induction with, again, through the job centre. I went home and had a word with my Auntie Jean and Uncle Raymond about it. I says, look, you know, I've got this opportunity. The money's not great because I'm still only getting me dole plus whatever. And they just said, not even no hesitation, do it. You know, don't worry about, you know, we'll look after you. You know, my Uncle Raymond would always have jobs around the yard for me to do and that. And I used to hate doing them. Like painting the fence, you know, oh, can you paint the fence? And they had got a big property, and the fence, it would stretch all the way along the front of the house, all the way up the side.
So it's not like a little fence.
They live in the countryside, so they got quite, you know, fair bit of land and that.
Yeah.
And Christ, painting this fence was it's like painting the Forth Road Bridge. You know, it's just never ending. But you know, he was great. You know, he said just, and again, it gave me a bit of self-worth, even though, you know, I was very work shy back then, and but they just said straight away, do it. You know, we've got your back. So I did it for 6 months, and there was a bit of a takeover going on with the company, because they said after 6 months we'll take you on, you know, full time. But the company was being taken over by an American sort of big corporation sort of thing. So they said, well, we can't offer you a full-time job yet, but we can give you another 6 months training, which was a bit demoralising.
Yeah.
And again, Auntie Jean, Uncle Raymond says, yeah, do it, you know, it's fine. But my dad wanted me to come home, back to Coventry. He wasn't in the best of health at the time. I can't remember, I think he'd just been diagnosed with diabetes. And, and he didn't, I don't think he knew at the time, or he was sort of getting to that, but he wasn't really in good health. He was a bit worried about me living in Belfast or just outside Belfast, but we used to work all over the north, you know, Belfast, Derry, all over. And early 90s, it was still quite a hot spot.
Like the Troubles and everything like that, yeah.
And Dad was a bit worried about me, you know, just obviously being in some of them places. I'd say rightly so, because when I was back in Coventry drinking, I was such a gobby little so-and-so.
Really?
And I think he'd be worried about me saying the wrong thing to the wrong person in Ireland, which is very easily done. But when I wasn't drinking, there was no chance of that, because I was just really quiet. You know, I wouldn't really say boo to a goose. It was just the drink that got me into trouble. But again, he was still worried about me because we had a few incidents where, you know, we were really close to explosions and that when they were going off.
Wow.
But even again, not trying to make light of it, but a lot of the time when the bombs went off, there was warnings, so you knew, and the police would sort of, the army would cordon off the streets and that. So it wasn't as dangerous as it could have been, you know. But there was obviously the odd time when they did no warnings, they went off.
And that was near to where you were?
Yeah, well, when we were not where we lived, Cumber, oddly enough, was really isolated.
So it's rural.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's even though it's like 8 mile outside of Belfast, it was really they never really affected by the troubles in that way. You know, the bombings and the shootings and that. There was one bomb in the early 70s at a hotel near there that was, you know, I think it was the early to mid 70s in a hotel not far from there that killed quite a few. But when I was living there, it was a different world. You know, it was hard to believe that when I get up in the morning in Cumber and then drive 10 miles down the road to Belfast, you know, there'd be soldiers everywhere, the roads closed, bomb scares, you know, and but you go back home to Cumber and it was
Peace.
actually like getting into a time machine and going to a different place. But Dad he was still a bit worried about me being there, and with the job situation, I just thought, in hindsight, you know, part of me wishes I'd stayed because, you know, Cumber's a beautiful place. You know, say we're so close to the sea, Strangford Lock. You know, it's just like 2 minute drive down the road. But in a way, I'm glad I came back because, you know, I wouldn't have had my kids. You know, things, you know, they take a path. But if they'd have offered me the full-time job, I would have stayed.
Yeah.
Regardless, I think. And I came back to Coventry. Initially, I thought it would be quite hard because I thought once I start going to them places again, seeing, you know, the same old mates again. But after that, it was, you know, it was fine. You know, there was no pressure to have a drink. I don't think once I got to have a pint, you're boring, so and so. It was you look well, you know. Even though I didn't have a job, I came home to no job, but I got a job doing I think it was labouring for a carpet fitter. Even though he was a carpet fitter, he was doing a job on, it was a big office complex. It's now National Grid in Warwick. But back then it was an American fuel company or something. He was laying all the carpet tiles, and I had this job of it was gluing vinyl skirting board to the wall, which again, not quite up there with sieving topsoil. But it wasn't the most exciting job in the world, and it was. But again, it gave me a wage initially, and then I started looking for a job. It was oddly enough that a lad that I used to play football with, he worked there. Then he got a job, and he recommended me to this guy because he didn't want to leave him in the lurch, saying, "Oh, you know, I've got to quit now. I've got the job I want to do." And he sort of got me in there, and the guy says, "Oh, fine, you know, as long as you've got someone reliable," which 18 months ago,
you weren't that person.
I weren't that person. But I used to turn up every day and he paid me. And then I found a job in the fire protection service engineer, which is what I was doing in Ireland.
Yeah.
And it was like this guy was like a lucky charm because Martin got the job he wanted and I got the job I wanted, you know, while we were gluing vinyl skirting boards to the wall. And then I started off, worked in Milton Keynes with this fire protection company. Again, I was I'd rang or started to ring them about 4 or 5 times because I'd rang all the other local companies and there was just nothing going. But I thought, I don't want to travel 50 miles to Milton Keynes to work.
Every day?
Every day. And then in the end, I just thought, I need a job. So I rang them up and they had vacancies. So I went down. My dad drove me down to Milton Keynes, had the interview, started a week later. Dad drove me down again, picked me van up, and that was it. I did that job for best part of 20 years. I moved around a few companies and eventually worked my way up from a service engineer to service manager, which again,
Impressive.
20 years ago, it was hard to believe. You know, I wouldn't have done any of that if I'd have carried on drinking.
And I think that's the inspiring, but also the scary thing of, well, if you hadn't have made those choices and changed your ways, where would you have been now? Like, you are, even when you said right at the beginning, like, you're a husband, you're a dad, you're a grandfather, you're actually an author as well. Because anybody that writes anything is an
Yeah.
author. You've actually got you've got a book here.
Which I sold 20 copies.
So you're definitely an
Yeah,
author then.
Probably, yeah.
How different things would have been if not. So am I right in hearing, Mark, that the day, obviously you saw your Uncle Sean
Yeah.
and it scared you. You went out, got absolutely bladdered, and then the thoughts were in your head and you basically thought, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
Did you go back to drink at any point?
No. The only time.
Well done, you. Wow.
The only time alcohol has passed my lips in 35 years, 3 times. 2 purely accidental. It was one we were at my auntie's Jean in Cumber. It was her, I want to say her 60th. Myself and my brother drove over for her party to surprise her. Her birthday is 27th December.
Right.
So we drove over. No, we didn't. I was going to say Boxing Day, but we drove over on the 27th. And got to her party in the evening, just as it started, and she had no idea we were coming. And we were stood at the bar, and I was drinking Coke. Again, I don't know why, because I'd stopped drinking Coke a long time ago, but I just had a glass of Coke this night. And I was stood next to me cousin Anne, who is Jean's daughter, and she was drinking vodka and Coke.
Right.
And I just picked up the wrong glass. I took a sip, so straight away.
You notice it straight away when you haven't been drinking as well.
And it was, oh, God, what's that? And I thought, the other time, okay, similar incident, I just picked up somebody's by mistake. But the last time, it was deliberate, but we were in Ireland. It was 2017. We went over to my cousin Mikey, lives in California. He was over, him and his wife Veronica. Ironically, they were just here this weekend on a trip. They were in Ireland in 2017, so a lot of us went over, had a bit of a family gathering down at my dad's old place in Carrick-on-Shore. And we were in the pub, and I think it was my Auntie May that had a half a Guinness. And I just said, I just picked it up and took a mouthful and put it down again. My wife, Kaz, she was like horrified. What are you doing? And I goes, I just wanted to taste. And that was it. I just wanted a little taste, and then I just put it down again.
And you were able to put it back down again.
And yeah, and that was it. But ironically, about 3 or 4 years ago, I did have this mad craving for a Guinness. I mean, I used to love Guinness when I was drinking, but I wouldn't drink it a lot. It would mainly be sometimes every now and again. I would just, because
it's heavy, isn't it?
Because it's heavy, and I know I couldn't drink it as much as down it as quickly and as much as lager, but I used to love the taste of it. And it was about, again, I can't remember the exact time frame, 3 or 4 years ago. I just had this mad craving. And we quite often go to this pub down in Long Itchington, the Two Boats.
Right.
It's on the canal. It's very dog friendly. We've got 2 little dogs, so the dogs love going there because they know they're going to get out. When we have food there, we always order a breast of chicken each for the dogs. And they go mental. Even when we get 10 miles from, or a couple of miles outside Long Itchington, they start going mental. They know where they're going. They go mental. And we were sitting there a few times, and I just thought, I fancy a Guinness. And it was probably about a month, so I had this craving. And I was sitting there, and it was a real battle. I wasn't, when you're having a battle in your head, shall I, shall not? Mm-hmm. I was sitting there, just a half. It won't hurt anyone. But I could never I could never go out for just the one. And I was thinking, well, if I have the half and I like it, next time I'll have a pint. and then another pint. And at the time, I never really looked into it, because you've got all the non-alcoholic lagers and ciders, and I don't like the ciders because most of the non-alcoholic ciders are like fruit ciders, and I think you might as well buy a can of Vimto or something.
Yeah.
The lagers, some of them are okay, but I only really drink them in the summer, because sometimes when you're drinking water all the time and I'm real tight, I won't pay for spring sparkling water or that. When someone offers me a bottle of water in the pub, I say, no, I don't want to pay for it. I want it free out your tap.
Yeah.
So it's
It's only water, isn't
yeah.
it?
So, but sometimes it's nice to have something refreshing, and so I have sort of got into the Heineken Zeros and the Beck Zeros, and occasionally I will have them. And when I was having this craving for Guinness, I thought, why is there no Guinness, non-alcoholic Guinness? So I went home and Googled it, and it was, and apparently it had just been released. And it was but it was only available in Morrison's and Waitrose at the time.
And this is Guinness Zero.
Guinness Zero.
Yeah.
So I drove round. As soon as I read that, the next day I went round every Morrison's in Coventry. They didn't have it. Some of them had not even heard of it. No, I didn't even know that. I showed them, the store managers or whoever I was talking to. I got my phone out. I said, well, it says here you'll stock it. Go and get it, young man. I said, no, I ain't got it. So I went round all the Morrisons, then went to Waitrose in Kenilworth.
Yeah.
And nothing on the shelf. So I asked the girl, I says, it says here you stock Guinness Zero. Oh, yeah, we got some out the back. And she come out and she gave me 4 cans. And I thought, oh, brilliant. I goes, how many more you got? And she goes, well, there's a few. And she says, I'll take 20. And I took 20 cans of Guinness home. And as soon as I poured it and tasted it, I mean, I've drank non-alcoholic lagers, and some of them taste like dishwater.
Yeah, they're not great, are they?
But the Guinness was as close as it could be. Still not as creamy, but it wasn't far off. And it was like being in heaven without the hangover. And I just thought, oh, brilliant. And I posted it on Facebook, a picture of this Guinness. And I think it was a few days later, my cousin Keith in Carrick-on-Shore in Ireland, he messaged me, bad news, Mark, they're recalling the Guinness. And I thought he was winding me up, because Keith's a real comedian, wind-up merchant. And I looked at it, and they recalled the Guinness. They said there was a bacteria during the brewing process. There was a bacterial contamination, so they had to recall it. And he says, bring it back to where you bought it from, and you'll get a full refund. And I thought, well, it's done me no harm.
Yeah.
No, so I just kept them. I thought I just drank them, and then but I kept ringing up. I found the number for the Guinness sort of HQ, and I kept ringing up on a monthly basis. And when's the Guinness being when's it coming out? Still not there yet. And I used to wind again, Kaz. I'd say I rang Guinness again today. They're getting an injunction against me to stop me ringing them up and hassling them.
It is so tasty, though.
Oh, it's the greatest thing. In Ireland the other week, they do it on draft in Ireland. You can only get it in the can here, but it's still nice. But
well, since I've obviously been pregnant a few times, I had one on Saturday actually. I had a Guinness Zero at the rugby club. My friend Rachel, she was my first ever guest on this podcast. She's not been drinking all year, so she's now gone sober this year, and she is obsessed with Guinness Zero.
Yeah.
She'll just get another one because it tastes so good.
Yeah, but that's like 3 or 4 years ago. Before that, I was having quite a severe battle in my head, because I was thinking just a half, and then again because it was the 2 boats in Long Itchington, it's about 9 or 10 miles outside Coventry. I was even thinking maybe I shouldn't have a half, because I haven't drank in 30 odd years. Will half take me over the limit?
Yeah.
And even some people will say, myself and Karen, we've been married 8 years in December. She used to say at the start, you've been off it for so long, do you think you could just have the one? And I just said no. I says, I probably could, but I don't want to test that, because again, I think, well, maybe the next night, the one didn't do me any harm. the night before.
I love
It's like,
too,
I don't know
yeah.
if you used to watch Father Ted.
Yeah.
The chat show host who was off the drink for years and years and years, and then was it Mrs. Doyle gave him a drink or something, and he went absolutely mental, you know, running through the fields naked and stuff. And then then he offered him a drink the next day. He says, "Oh yeah," he goes, "Well, it didn't do me any harm
Yeah, it wasn't that bad.
yesterday." But yeah, I just don't. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to jeopardise everything I've sort of worked towards, you know, in those 35 years. It's just not worth.
35 years is such an achievement as well. You rarely
Mm,
hear that.
mm,
Like,
it's
I know that you've watched or listened to my husband Callum when he was on the podcast,
yes.
and he's been to meetings and stuff like that. And I know that you've mentioned to me that you've
I've
never
never
even
been
been
to a
to a
meeting.
meeting.
No,
So you've done this all on your own.
I used to say that. Yeah, you know, but the fact I didn't go to a meeting, and even like yesterday, I did like a. I'm trying to promote the book on TikTok, and
Yeah.
I was doing like a selfie video on TikTok, and I said I did it on my own, but straight away I thought, well, no, actually I didn't, because without without my Auntie Jean and Uncle Raymond in Ireland, I don't know where I would have been.
Could have believed in you.
And I honestly don't think I would have done it in Coventry. You know, stayed. You know, I probably would. I reckon I would have stayed off it a couple of months. Or again, it's all speculation there, because you know, obviously I didn't. You know, I moved away, and it helped. But Jean and Raymond, they not only got me out of Coventry, but when I needed that job, they said do it, and they supported me. Raymond put me to work. We used to even go down, and he'd get me up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. We'd go down to the beach and gallop the greyhounds, because he used to race them.
So what, you just let them off on the beach?
Yeah, we'd go down the beach, and obviously because the greyhounds, they need obviously a big gallop, you know, to obviously keep them fit. So we used to go down Strangford Lock to the beach, and we just race the dogs, and or let them, you know, get the exercise they need. You know, we used to walk them up and down the streets as well, but obviously that was just getting them ticking over. But the real sort of training was down the
Letting them
beach,
loose.
and but they were wild. It was comical because we used to go down in Raymond's car, and I got in one day and I went to get the seatbelt, and the seatbelt just ripped off of my hand, and I thought, what's going on here? The dogs used to chew the seatbelts. If you didn't put the muzzle on, they used to eat the seatbelts and eat everything. And Raymond was coming back from a dog meeting in Dundalk one night, and somebody drove into him, crashed into his car, so his car was off the road. And it was ironic again, good timing, that I just got the job with the fire protection, so I got a van with the job. So then I gave Uncle Raymond my car, and he wanted to pay me for it, but I thought, you know, everything he's done for me, I thought, no, I can't take money off you. But Raymond's not like that. He wouldn't take something for nothing.
Yeah.
So he gave me a set of golf clubs, and you know, so I got something out of it. So even when I came home, so I had this set of golf clubs to bring home with me, because I started playing golf when I was in Ireland again, ironically, to keep me out of the pub. And it was, but it was like swapping one addiction for another.
Yeah.
Because it was, what my cousin said to me, come out for a game of golf on Sunday, and I just thought, I'm not going out playing golf, you know, I'm a socialist. And but I was addicted straight away. And again, I think maybe part of that was because I just really needed an outlet to stay out of the pub. And then we used to just go out pitch and putt, you know, driving range and that. And then we started going out playing proper golf courses and digging them up, because we were never any good. But I used to just practice all the time, and it was even when I got back to Coventry, it was to keep away from that temptation, because I was still only just over 2 years sort of sober. You know, it was a struggle, but I thought, just go and play golf, and I was all the time out on a golf course. And
well, people do need they do need a purpose. They do need, if it is a distraction or something, as you were saying, to keep them away from, then that's a healthy somewhat frustrating at times,
Yeah.
I imagine, with golf.
Yeah.
Outlet, as you
Yeah.
say. This book, Mark, tell me about it. So the book is called Staying Sober, What 35 Years Without a Drink Has Taught Me.
Yeah.
So
Should have had a shorter title, really. Should
I think it's brilliant. How I quit drinking, stayed sober, and rebuilt my life from scratch. So for people listening to this, because we don't want to give too much away, but this book, what's this book for, and what would people get from reading this book?
It's not. I didn't set out to make a preachy type of book, saying this is what you must do, this is how you will stay sober. It's basically just what worked for me. I've been writing a screenplay for about 25 years, and I started doing it, and then I keep stopping, coming away, stopping, and it's just the last few months I was trying to just focus on it and try and get some headway on it, because the story and I'm writing about the screenplay is quite important. It is about sort of recovery and addiction and that. And so I never planned to write this book. It was just while I was writing the screenplay, and then I decided I want to turn the screenplay more into a novel, because screenplays are really hard.
Right.
And while I was writing about some of the addictions, so it's basically about a group of people in rehab, which ironic. I'm writing about rehab and I've never been to a meeting. And while I was sort of writing through some of that, I just thought I just wanted to get my own thoughts on paper about what worked for me.
On your journey.
And it was sort of just more notes for the book, the other book, like the screenplay stroke novel. It was more notes for that. And the more I did it, I just thought, maybe this might help someone. Like I say, even I don't pretend to preach about don't go to meetings, do it yourself, because what worked for me, it's not going to work for. Might work for some people. It's not going to work for anyone or everyone. Not everyone is going to have an outlet where somebody's going to pick up the phone and say, "Come over here," whether it's Ireland, Wales, Scotland, anywhere away from your hometown.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to have that, but there are ways you can escape your own demons, haunts. Even, say friends. Sometimes you have to isolate from certain friends, and I think the saddest thing about when I stopped drinking was my best mate. When I came back from Ireland, we couldn't really be in each other's company,
right,
because of he was still drinking, and we went out once, and his mum used to say to me, "Please have a word with Stephen. Please have a word. I'm really worried about him." And we went out one night, and he just said to me basically, "Don't you even try it. Don't try and,
convince me or tempt me,
convert me to
yeah.
your ways." And I didn't, because I knew from my own story that even though I knew people wanted me to stop, I didn't care. It's when you have that realization that you've got to do it for yourself first and foremost. So I used to think, for instance, if I was drinking when I was, say, married or in a relationship, and my partner wanted me to stop drinking, I'd know just the way I am that if we'd have had a row, I would have went out and had a drink just to spite them. Which is, so I think when you're doing it for yourself, then you're only spiting yourself. So the saddest thing there was when, we just couldn't really be in each other's company. And the ironic thing was when I was living in Belfast, I came home for Christmas one year because I wanted to obviously be with my dad and that for Christmas. And Christmas Day, Steve rang me up at the house. He says, "You coming down to rehearsal?" I goes, "Yeah, we'll be down in a bit." And he went, "You still off to drink?" And I went, "Yeah." And he went, "Oh, you're just going through a bad patch." So
you're going through a bad patch because you're not drinking. Yeah. Right.
But that was Steve, and he was, we were best mates, since school and that. And sadly, he's no longer with us, and he had an accident, banged his head, and unfortunately passed away. But I'll say a waste of a life, because he had so much more to give. But I still think fondly of him. I don't think fondly of the. It's easy to say sometimes. I think you can sort of romanticise your drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we had some great nights out, but when I think about it, I thought, well, I didn't really.
Were they actually that great?
Nah, and I just think it was because what I was doing, like with Steve, even though he loved to drink and he drank a lot, but he could go to work the next day.
Mm-hmm.
He held down a job. He was great. He drove diggers, machines, all the big machinery on building sites. He drove all them. He held down a job, no problem. A lot of the lads we used to go out drinking with, they all, get me wrong, they all drank as much as more than I did, but they could get up the next day. And that was the thing. I'd you come the weekends and they'd all be going out and I'd be skint because I didn't have a job.
And it affects people differently as well. I think what was interesting about what you mentioned earlier, what works for you may not work for somebody else, but the reason why you drank is not the reason why somebody else drank as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do I stop drinking? Well, why did you start? Or why are you finding it hard to stop?
Yeah.
And I think with this, I know that you sent, so I've got the proper one now.
Yeah.
You've sent me the book in like
The manuscript of it, yeah.
Manuscript, is that what it's called? Right.
I think so, yeah. I should know. I'm an author.
And you are an author. You are a bloody author. And I definitely got that from reading it. Yeah. It's not preachy. It's actually quite comical. And what I loved from being from Coventry, the pubs that you were naming, the places that you were naming, like it's relatable, Mark. And you've sold 20 copies.
I think so.
Fantastic. Where can...
It's on Amazon.
Right.
It's also on Apple Books. But
okay.
I don't know. I think I need to remove one or the other because I think why overcomplicate. I think when I first published it, I was thinking I'll try and get it in as many places as possible, but I think I've got it on a couple of sites in America as well, which is and I've sold one there. But my cousin...
So you've made it over the water.
Oh, I have, yeah. I sold one copy.
Well, what I'll do is I'll link it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I'll put the links. So if you can... I'll try and find them, but if not, you send me the links, and then I'll add it into the blurb and everything like this so people know where to get it. Because we've got a mutual friend, Kieran, who's obviously... He knows the podcast, he knows you and your story, and that's why he's put us... in contact together because...
Thank you, Kieran.
Thank you, King Kieran. So the whole purpose of this and the podcast in general is people that have turned pain into purpose. You have done something really extraordinary. 35 years sober is impressive. It really, really is. And I'm really pleased that you've been able to share your story here today.
No, it's been a pleasure.
How have you found just chatting? Less daunting now?
Not going to lie, when I walked in, I was terrified. I was really nervous. Which in a way, it's not a bad thing. It's like when I used to play football, I was always nervous before a game.
Yeah.
And I used to think, if I turned up for a game not nervous, I knew I was going to play bad.
Yeah.
But as we've sort of gone on, it's been really easy.
Yeah.
A little bit hard a couple of times. I had to choke back a little bit when I was talking about my Auntie Jean and that and what they did for me. But no, it's been therapeutic.
Well, it's the reason why it's real. It's your story, and things that make us emotional for a reason. They had a significant impact on your life in general, but on your recovery. Like they believed in you, they trusted in you, and they gave you a chance.
Yeah, they did.
Essentially, didn't they? So I think this story will be really inspirational to people to think like, oh, okay, so you don't necessarily need to go to all of the meetings in order to be able to quit then. This is another avenue that people don't always think of. Yeah. So I'm really grateful that you've agreed to come on, that you've shared your story and... that you're an author, you're a published author.
Oh, I am.
So in terms of the next steps for you? You're going to keep promoting your book.
Yeah, I'm still sort of learning TikTok.
Yeah.
Which is again for a 57-year-old trying to navigate around that. I mean, Facebook's easy; you just post stuff. But when you're trying to promote, and I have to do videos and stuff, and it's not easy.
No, it's not.
But I'm hoping now that once I can do a little bit of that, I want to get back to finishing the book that sort of started that one. So but it's just I get very I'm easy to sidetracked. So now that I was sort of really into doing the screenplay, sort of stroke novel, for ages, and then this has sort of sidetracked me, which is in a good way because I'm enjoying it. But now I want to try and get back onto that, because the good thing as well, like with I posted on Facebook about it and that, and there's been quite a few people really supportive and that, and some of them saying, because obviously I was trying to promote that I was writing something else, so they're keen to read that.
100%, and I will be as well.
So,
I'll if you give me your social media links as well, like your TikTok, and I'll repost it from the podcast's account.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Ali.
I hope that well, as you say, you're not as nervous as you were when you walked in.
No.
And as I said at the beginning, everyone does it. The first time I ever walked in here, I was like, oh no, this is too scary. So I'm just really grateful, and I look forward to seeing your screenplay.
Thank you.